In this lesson, we'll continue with the installation and configuration of pfSense. More specifically, we will implement firewalling. Our mission is simple. Restrict the 172.16.1 network from pinging 8.8.8, but allow other ICMP traffic to and from other hosts. In this fake scenario, we are going to act as if we received a complaint from the owners of Google's DNS, and they asked us to restrict ICMP traffic from the pings from this network. This is part of putting it all together set of tasks, so let's discuss firewalling. Firewalling refers to the process of implementing and managing a network security system using the pfSense open source firewall distribution. Network administrators and IT professionals are responsible for configuring and managing the firewall. Firewalling is an ongoing process that needs to be in place whenever the firewall is active, typically whenever the network is operational. The firewall is deployed on the network's edge or at strategic points within the network to control the flow of traffic between network segments. The main purpose of firewalling is to enhance network security by regulating incoming and outgoing traffic, protecting against unauthorized access, and preventing malicious attacks. Firewalling is achieved through the configuration of rules, which define what types of traffic are allowed or denied based on specific criteria such as source and destination IP addresses, ports, and protocols. This enables the firewall to inspect and control network traffic effectively. The rest of the how is what this video is all about, so let's get into it. To get started, grab the companion guide from the link in the show notes below. If you like this content, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any new videos. Also, make sure you are familiar with VirtualBox, Kali Linux, and Ubuntu. So we're ready to evaluate our mission if we choose to accept it. Our mission is to restrict the 172.16.1.0.16 network from pinging 8.8.8. So basically here. So we have our Kali Linux and our Ubuntu box over in the PrivNet, private network, and we want to restrict them from actually going out with ICMP requests and getting echo replies from 8.8.8. So that's our mission. We're going to accept it. But we're also going to make sure that you are familiar with the previous episode, which is routing and DHCP services in this video here. So click on the companion guide, click on the link, and make sure you are familiar with VirtualBox, Ubuntu, Kali Linux, and pfSense. Okay, so let's scroll up, do some housekeeping, and we can, in the interest of time, strike multiple birds with one stone. First and foremost, it says verify the pfSense virtual machine has two interfaces. So if you recall in the previous exercise, we went to the settings and we have two adapters. We have adapter 1, we go to settings, we go to network, and in adapter 1, we see we have a bridge adapter. This bridge adapter is going to go out into our wide area network. So this is this interface here. So the bridge adapter is getting a DHCP assigned IP address and it's connecting to your internet card, whether you have a network interface card, something like that. Adapter 2 is connected to an internal network that we created, and we call it PrivNet, and we made sure that it allowed virtual machines because this whole environment is a virtualized environment. We click OK. In the interest of time, I'm going to start this up. It's going to be a normal start, and it is important that we start these in a particular sequence. For example, we want to make sure that the router is up. We want to make sure DHCP services are up because our Ubuntu box and our Kali Linux box will be expecting to get DHCP assignments, IP assignments from the DHCP server. As we implement firewall, we want to make sure all of the protections are in place as we're booting everything up. So what I'm going to do is basically position pfSense on the side here. This is it coming up. It's booting. And we're going to do the same thing as the companion guide suggests. We're going to verify the Kali Linux and the Ubuntu side as well. So I'm going to go back into our diagram. I'll just click on show so you can see that pfSense is booting up. And when we go to settings on the Kali Linux side, go to settings. I go to network, adapter 1. I want to make sure it's on the internal network, which is this network here. It's called PrivNet. Great. We also want to make sure it allows VMs, and while we're at it, we're going to actually start it up. So I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to start a normal start with the VM. And our Kali box is going to be over here, something like this. When it's booting up, I don't need it right just this moment, so I'm going to do the same thing for the Ubuntu. And on Ubuntu side, same thing. I go to settings, I go to network, I go to adapter. It's the first and only adapter. I make sure it's internal network, PrivNet, and I want to go to advanced and make sure that I allowed all the VMs. And this time, rather than just right clicking, I'm going to start it from the menu options, and our Ubuntu VM virtual machine will start booting, and I'm going to position it about here. Okay, so good. We're looking pretty good. What our environment should start looking like is we have pfSense running here. We have the Kali Linux booting up. Let's go to our companion guide and make sure we are completing the housekeeping tasks. Okay, so we verify the adapter on the pfSense side. We did that also for Kali Linux. We also did that for Ubuntu. We said important for DHCP services. Yes, that is true. And other sequences for routing, firewalling, and other services you may be having running. You want to make sure that you're turning on your network services first. In other words, this is fired up first before you fire up hosts on the internal network. I have Kali Linux starting up. I have Ubuntu signing up, which is good. And a note about my performance. So I have a MacBook Pro. My processor is not super fast. It's a little bit older computer. It's an Intel Core i7, 2.6 gigahertz. I also have a 4 gigabyte graphics card, nothing too fancy. And my memory is 16 gigs of DDR4s, 2667 megahertz. And the reason why I wanted to talk about performance is I have 3 virtual machines running simultaneously. They happen to be relatively light virtual machines. pfSense is about 1 gig of memory, 2 gig for Kali Linux, 2 gig for Ubuntu. Not really resource intensive. As you develop more of your virtual machines, you want to make sure your host operating system and platform has the performance to power all of them. So visit VirtualBox to get an understanding of what your requirements are, and I'll put the link into VirtualBox in the show notes as we continue. Okay, so we're back here. It's time to verify connectivity. I'm going to keep the Ubuntu here. My VirtualBox manager is here that's controlling everything. And I want to go to Kali Linux first. So let's go to Kali Linux. And we're going to log in with Kali Linux with Kali. And that's firing up. So I'm going to position it over here as it continues. I get the Kali Linux welcome screen. Great. The quieter you become, the more you are able to hear. Let's verify connectivity. So I'm going to open up a terminal. I right-clicked, open terminal here. And I just want to see if I can get to the outside world. I'm going to ping 8.8. And I have healthy ping replies, which means that I am coming from Kali Linux out to this interface, out to the wide area network, and pinging Google's DNS server. Great. I Control Z out of that. I know I have IP services, but just for fun, let's clear the screen. Let's do an IP adder. And I see my IP address is 172.16.1.103, and that's fine. It doesn't look exactly like this, and that's okay. It could be for a variety of reasons, but as long as I know I'm getting healthy IP address and I'm getting it from the DHCP server, let's go ahead and do the same thing on the Ubuntu side. So I go to my VirtualBox manager. I go to Ubuntu, I click on show, and I'm going to do the same login sequence, which is I have my username and time to enter my password. Okay, after a brief moment, my Ubuntu box lit up. I'm going to open in terminal over here, and I'm going to bring this over on this side here so you can take a look. If I slam it to the side, it gets a little bit bigger. If I double click, it takes full screen. In this case here, I'm going to do ifconfig. So we can see the IP address. I get the 172.16.1.100. That's fine. I'm going to see if I can ping Google 8.8.8.8. That looks good. I'm going back to my network diagram here. I'm going to Control Z on the Ubuntu side. Well, I think we're good here. We can ping another IP address. We're going to clear. I think everything looks right. Let's go to our companion guide to make sure everything is done, and we have verified IP connectivity. We can ping outside the network. And the next thing is to complete the installation of pfSense. So we installed the basic routing aspects of it. Now it's time to configure it outright. Now I can do this in a variety of ways. Because I have the Ubuntu machine, I'm going to make the Ubuntu machine a little bit bigger. And I'm just going to use the Ubuntu machine to access this interface. So it says determine the LAN IP for our VM, our pfSense VM, which should be 172.16.1. If I'm not sure, I'm going to go to VirtualBox. I'm going to click on Show, and I do see that is the IP address for the local area interface. It's 176.16.1.1. Okay, great. I go back to Ubuntu, I show, and at this point here, I'm going to go in through the web configurator. So I'm going to go into the browser. I'm going to fire up Firefox. I can bring this, make this more prominent so we can see. And as pfSense is coming up, I'm going to do 172.16.1.1. I'm going to possibly get this warning here. So it says in the show notes to go with the Kali Linux machine. It actually doesn't matter. It's all web-based. And I'm getting a certificate error here. So no problem. I'm going to click on Advanced. And it says accept the risk and continue. And that's fine. It's because the certificate is not matching up. That's okay. I'll click Notes here. And it says put in the following credentials. It's admin. And the default password is pfSense. pfSense. And I don't want to save that. I'm going to select the check mark here and say that we've done this. And we are now at the welcome screen. And at this point here, we can go ahead and go through this wizard and accept all of the on-screen instructions and prompts. So I'm going to click on Next. Okay, I'm in step 1 of 9. I click on Next again. It says pfSense for primary DNS server. We're going to do 8.8.8.8. You guys have seen this before. This is going to convert friendly names to IP addresses. So when I go to friendly name web page, it can take me to the IP address. I click on Next on this page here, and then nothing to do here at this point. We're going to accept all of the defaults. So we say Next. We already configured this interface here doing the command line installation of pfSense. So we click Next again. Now it says to change the password. So let's just do a little bit of housekeeping so we know where we are. And it says change the admin password. And this is obviously a very important thing to do if you are in a production environment. You do not want to accept and use the default username and password. So this is a good time to change it. I'm going to change it now. Okay, I just changed the password. I'm going to select Next. I do not want to save that in my browser. And now it's time to reload the system to let those changes take effect. While that's happening, I'm going to go back on this side to say we have done this. And it says check for updates, which is another housekeeping item we want to do with our systems. Assuming you have tested them and they will not break anything, you want to make sure you are running the latest and greatest software. Let's go ahead and check for those updates. I see that it is working, and let's give that a moment to complete. Okay, that was quick. It says I'm on the latest stable release, 2.7.0. It says the status is up to date. This is fantastic. I'm going to navigate to System, log out, and make sure that my password, my username and password works. So I'm going to put those two combinations in. It worked. I do not want to save it. And at this point here, I'm going to accept the copyright and trademark notices. Click on Accept. And I can do this survey a little bit later. I'm going to close out. And we are done with completing the installation of pfSense. Let's do our housekeeping. And we are done. So this is a good time to just take a little break. Okay, break's over. We are back. And we are going to configure pfSense to block or allow ping packets via the web interface. Now, there are a lot of services here in pfSense, and we'll explore them throughout this course. The first one that we're going to do is the firewalling. So all of this looks good. Obviously, green is good, red not so, but we'll keep an eye on this as we continue. So it says navigate to the firewall and rules section. And we get the rules, and we have the WAN interface or the local area network. And the idea is the WAN interface or the local area network. We want the local area network. And we're back to our companion guide. And we're going to add a rule here, an IP rule. So we're going to click the add up arrow because we want it to be on the top of the list. And we're going to go ahead with these items here. So there's a number of things we're going to do here. So the action is we want to block traffic. The interface is on the local area network. IP range is IPv4. We can do this for IPv6 as well. And the protocol that we're looking for is ICMP. So we want to block ICMP and any of its subtypes. Echo request, echo replies. The source address is any, meaning that anything out there. And then we're going to save an inside, I should say. The source is anything inside our PrivNet network. And the destination is, we're going to be very specific. It's only going to be a single host. And we're going to put in Google's DNS, which is 8.8.8.8. And we want to log the packets. And in this case here, we're going to call it exactly this. So I'm going to just copy and paste to make life a little bit easier. I'm copying, I come over in here, and I paste, and it says no more ping to Google's DNS. Okay, great. I click save. And before I apply the changes, let's take a look at that. Well, we did that before. We saw that we could ping. So we're going to apply the changes. That's important. We set the rule. In other words, we loaded it up. Now we have to pull the trigger and actually fire it up. We can watch it here while it's going into action. But while that's happening, I'm going to select our housekeeping actions here. And we have done everything. And let's go ahead and see if all of this works. So I'm going to minimize this. And I realize I'm blocking myself out, but this is for illustration purposes. I'm going to ping 8.8.8.8. And it doesn't work. That's fantastic. That's because we have a firewall. I'm doing Control Z to stop that ping and make sure I can ping to 1.1.1.1. So I have implemented a firewall, and this is how the rules work. Let's go ahead and minimize this and take a look at the pfSense rule. And once again, this is an IPv4 ICMP restrict, and we have completed our first blocking of ping traffic. Okay, let's continue and experiment with a few things. So I'm going to configure my screen just a little bit differently now, so that way you can see these in action. So what I'd like to do is get the Kali Linux, show that over here, and move that over onto this side here. And we're going to configure our screen so that way we have more real estate, but we can also see some of the activity a little bit better. And what I'm trying to mimic is essentially a network operations center. So if I have Kali Linux over here, I have pfSense running. Let's show pfSense. I'm going to say pfSense is, let's just say, over here. And I also have Ubuntu running, and let's say it's over here. And that's going to be sort of like my network management station. And I just minimize VirtualBox. What I'm trying to mimic here is a network operations center, something similar to this. So some of you are probably already in a NOC, a network operations center, and some of you are aspiring to get here. And what we're trying to show is that I may have my network maps. So this is a global map of a NOC. This is the area that they're more interested in. And you see all the terminals. So this is what we're trying to mimic in this environment, where in your home setup, you can do this with one computer. I have a MacBook Pro here, but as you get more monitors, you can have one monitor that will have your network map. You'll have another monitor that will have all of your tools, and then you have a dashboard to see what performance looks like. So in this case here, I'm going to control the Kali Linux VM. This is it here. This is Ubuntu, which is accessing the web configuration tool of pfSense. So this is pfSense that's sitting over here, but I'm using the web version of it so we can manage the firewall rules. So let's give us some room on the Kali Linux side, and we're going to ping 8.8.8 again, and it should not work because we restricted the entire network. So I need numlock set up on that. So I'm going to ping and use my keyboard like this, and it's not working. And to demonstrate, we're going to take a look at rules. The rules matter in terms of the order. So what I'm going to do here is I have the block rule here. I'm actually going to copy one of these rules, and actually we'll just go back, firewall rules, and I'm going to go into the local area interface here, and I'm going to copy this rule. So we have the block rule, and there's a copy option here. I'm going to back to firewall and rules. Sometimes it's a little tricky with the mouse. So maybe I'll give myself a little bit more room so we can see this a little bit better. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're going to make sure we have select. We're going to copy this block rule. I know it's a block rule because it has this portion here. So we'll go ahead and select that. And we see the block rule. And now we're going to turn this into a pass rule, and we're going to click save. Same rule, but now instead of blocking, it's passing. And I'm going to apply the changes. And the changes are not going to work just yet. I'm going to change the rule order, which is the point of this exercise. So I have a block rule that says do not allow any ICMP or IPv4 ICMP traffic to Google's DNS server. And I have a pass rule that's doing the same thing. I'm going to change the order just to show you that orders matter. Now the rule set has been changed. I'm going to click on save. And now I'm going to apply the changes. And what we should see here is now ping traffic starts to pick up here. What does that mean? It means that we want to make sure that the rules in our firewalls are applied in a orderly fashion. So you want your more restrictive rules on top. In this case here, I wanted to make sure that we are not going to allow any ping traffic. So the restrictive rule was here. It almost didn't matter if I have the rule below because I already allowed it. Let's do this again so we can see this. I'm going to change the rule order. I'm going to save. I'm going to apply the change. And there's a little bit of a grandfathering effect here that we still have the pings going through, and that's fine. I'm going to go to the monitor to make sure that the filter is done. It says every 3 seconds it is done. I'm going to Control Z, and I'm going to ping again, and I don't expect it to work. And it doesn't work because if I go back to the firewall and the rules, local area network, if I look at the rules, my block rule is before my allow rule, and we do not have ping traffic. And that's what we wanted to demonstrate. So if we go back to the companion guide, give ourselves a little bit of room here. We wanted to test the firewall and verify that the rules order matters. So we ping this, we demonstrated, and our mission is accomplished. We can ping other IP addresses, but we can't ping Google's DNS server. And we'll do that one more time just to close this out. We can ping 1.1.1 successfully. We cannot ping 8.8.8. Mission accomplished. We'll move on to the next lesson. See you on the other side.